Okay, I have got the green light that we are ready to broadcast here. We're doing that. Welcome everyone. Uh, Today, John Howe here with Amy Ries.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while. A lot has happened since we were on here before. Today, we figured it would be a good time to think not a lot has been happening here, but actually some interesting things have been happening here. So we'll take questions from you all on what has happened through the season, maybe what is coming up here for next year, and some of the recent things that have been happening here. So some very interesting things between the Nest and Decorah, so we can cover that. So anyway, thanks for coming today. I guess I first wanted to thank the folks at Explore for helping us get this set up and get the information out and connect with you all, and also our landowners and our collaborators in Decorah that have helped out with giving this and giving us access to this property and these eagles and bringing them to you. So I will get started here now, and we will look over, and we're getting our questions here from our Skype window over here. So we'll take a look at our first question here. So first question, have there been any sightings of DN1 near Decorah, near the Decorah hatchery? Since this is all new, okay, I think that's our first question. First thing first, I guess, this nest is Decorah North, so it's not near the hatchery. It's in the vicinity of Decorah. That's about all I can tell you. This is a nest that we have not disclosed the location of it. So with that said, I guess the straight answer to the question is DN1 has not been seen south at the hatchery.
Hold on just a second. We also don't have any way of identifying DN1. So if DN1 leaves and goes somewhere else, we won't know about it. We don't have bands on DN1, and we don't have a transmitter on DN1. And really, juvenile eagles don't tend to have distinguishing marks one way or another. So once DN1 goes, he or she will, for all practical purposes, be lost to us. So it's nice to think the eaglets might get together, but that's not something we're going to know once DN1 disperses.
Right. So we don't know that about DN1. On a very similar topic, though, I think what we can tell you is that we did transmit 2 eagles this year, D24 and D25, down at the fish hatchery nest. And just recently, the data that was coming back from Brett Mandernack, the study that he's doing on those 2 eagles, along with his regional study with larger number of eagles over a long time now. Basically a big research study. We did see evidence that one of, was it D25?
It was D24.
D24, the oldest of the 2 eaglets at the fish hatchery nest in Decorah, did actually make it up and probably interacted with DN1. And that was just, what, last week?
Yeah, that was. And we've got some video of that. I can put a link over at the Explore channel for anyone who wants to see it.
So kind of funny. We thought that was very exciting, interesting. It's like what happened here. We have the city eagle that is visiting its country cousin. I guess that was what we first thought. So with GPS coordinates, and then also with, I think we did have that sighting of actually 2 eagles together.
Yeah, we did.
So we were able to confirm it. Even this time of year when the eagles are not as easily seen, just because they're not around the nest near as much. So
we've also got another question. Since this is all new, what has been surprising to each of us at this nest? The thing that really surprised me, because it's so close to Decorah, because you've got a similar weather, similar climate, it's rich in food resources. I really thought we would see very similar behavior to the behavior we see at the Decorah main nest, and we did not. So to me, that was one of the most interesting things. This nest actually reminded me a little bit more of the year that we watched Eagle Valley. The male was a little more distant. There was less time both parents spent in the nest. There were only 2 young in that nest. There was some sibling aggression, although not to the degree at Decorah North. But that was what surprised me. I didn't expect the 2 nests, since they're relatively close together, to have such different behavior.
Yeah, and I guess there's a number of surprising things. I've just talked about a couple of them. One, we saw a real marked difference in the behavior of the eagles in the beginning part of the year. At the main nest down near the hatchery, we had a man-made nest that we started, and they started building right away, but there was 2 full months there of intense building of the nest. Now, at the North Nest here, they already had the mansion of a nest. You guys know the size of that nest. It's about 9 feet in diameter at the biggest part. So, I don't know. They built it out big to start with, right? They did the full spread right away. So, did not see near as much nest building activity at the North Nest. So that was one thing early on that was noticeable. And then I think, you know, the one thing that we noticed is the original Decorah Eagles by the fish hatchery, just saying that, by the fish hatchery, they were very, very advantageous as to where they've located themselves. So there's an abundant food source there, in addition to some of the other mammals and other food prey that they bring up to the nest. So we saw a difference in the amount, I think, and abundance of food, and I think that there's probably a larger radius of hunting and food gathering that goes on with the Decorah North nest, and we saw that kind of reflected a little bit in how the eaglets behaved with a little bit more. I think we did notice marked food scarcity at certain times, where we can talk a little bit more about that too, but that did result in some other things happening.
And then the third question is, does growing up as a singleton make life different off the nest versus the 2 from the hatchery? And do we think DN1 is female? I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to guess, because I really thought with Decorah, Maine, the fish hatchery nest, I really thought we had a male and a female. I was in my head, I tried not to share that opinion, but I was just certain that was what we had, and we didn't. And Brett Mandernack measured the eagles. He knows his business. If he says they're both male, they're both male. So I'm not going to guess, because I no longer feel comfortable guessing.
Yeah, and I have no way of knowing either. So I guess we don't know. I guess we can just leave it at that. So let's see. We're on number 4 here. Is it known if other wildlife animals nearby were affected like DN3 and Mom were? Any updates on that subject? So I think what we're talking about here is the poisoning of Mom, and then bringing the poisoned raccoon up into the nest. So we pretty much are limited to what we can see from the nest, and I guess the only thing that we know for sure that was affected would be the raccoon that died, and then Mom and DN2.
DN2, yeah.
So that's really all we know. I guess as far as other wildlife, I mean, we could make predictions and things like that, but really what we saw there is we saw a predator that was taking, you know, a raccoon, and we know the types of prey and food that bald eagles eat. So there's other eagles out there. There's turkey vultures, others that would eat on that type of food prey. So we can only guess that it could happen to other birds of prey, or a coyote or something that might eat a dead raccoon. So.
And we want to reiterate real quickly, you know, as John said earlier, these eagles have a wider hunting range. We don't know who was baiting, but we also don't believe that it was done intentionally. And we did do an education campaign with kind of everybody up in that area. And it hasn't happened again. So we both feel pretty confident. You know, people really like these eagles. they enjoy their presence, they're proud of being able to have them. So we don't believe that we will see this again. We've also done some education via our website as well, and some personal searching on YouTube to tell people they shouldn't be doing that sort of thing in the comments. So just so everybody's aware of that.
Right. And if you take a look at the blog post that Amy put together, there is some good information that talks about the issue, and it is an issue that has been brought up in the central U.S. northern states, Michigan and Illinois and Wisconsin and some others. So it is an issue that has been being dealt with, and actually the label has been changed on the golden Malvern fly bait that's used by, on label by a lot of people that own farms that try to control flies for their cattle or for horses. So it is a labeled use insecticide for flies. So I guess, I don't think it's ever going to be gone. So it's just off-label use is the concern and the educational opportunity.
Yeah.
This is
to
really
tell people
brought up.
you really can't do this. So that's sort of what we've been focused on.
Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Do eagles lay eggs later in the year? Number 5, yeah. Do eagles lay eggs later in the year as they breed further north, such as northern Minnesota and upper Michigan? Eagles arrive in upper Michigan in March, just when they would lay and hatch. I think down here is what they were implying. So we definitely see a difference between different parts of the country, and that's good for you guys, right? You can see eagles in Florida earlier in the year, and then you can kind of progress up through the states and then get further north. And I think what we're looking here for egg laying at that March time period.
Yeah, so you're looking at egg laying, maybe February through March. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service actually has guidelines as far as when eagle nests are active throughout the United States. And you have, first of all, like John said, a nesting chronology that's sort of seasonal. So you get really early nesting in Florida, and then it sort of rolls out later and later as you go north into the country. But then you have individual nesting chronology. So you're looking at the Decorah Eagles laying eggs in February. Right. But the Decorah North Eagles not really all that far away laying right. eggs in March. And we also saw the same thing actually over in Eagle Valley. They were also right. later layers. So,
yeah, and we did ask some of our eagle expert contacts about even just the difference with the two eagle pairs here in the Decorah area, with a 3-week difference in approximately in when they laid eggs and when they hatched. And the answer really was there's nothing, at least in the same area, that would necessarily make a difference as to why there would be that offset in 3 weeks. So with that variability in 3 weeks, even just in the same geographic area, you could imagine that there's some variability north of that and south of that. But very regionally, I mean, if we're getting up from Minnesota all the way up into Canada, I would think that we'd see some differences there.
Yeah, I would tend to think so as well.
With the colder weather. So, and that's one thing interesting with a lot of the different years of activity that we've seen and recorded here in the Midwest of the U.S. in Decorah, Iowa, is just the impact that weather has with the snows and ice storms and things like that. Totally different occurrences happening with weather and effects of weather on the nest and activities than you'd have down in the southern U.S.
Yeah.
So
the next question, number 6, why are the other Decorah Eagles banded? So why is Decorah banded when Decorah North isn't banded and has transmitters? That's really more a question for Brett, because this is actually his study. But first of all, we just started working with the Decorah North nest. The Decorah Eagles, we have a whole way to go about banding them. We have a methodology. We do this thing, we do this thing. So we've got a process in place. We don't really have a process for Decorah North. I don't know whether they'll be added to the study or not. That will really depend on the goals of Brett's study. So we'll just see going forward.
Right. Yeah, we had an experience and a track record and history of doing trapping and putting transmitters on eagles down at the fish hatchery nest. So I think, that's what we knew. That's what Brett wanted to go with. We had 2 eagles, and I think that was one of the things of interest
Absolutely.
is what happens to sibling eagles. Is their interaction different, and is their dispersal different than just the eagles? And the big difference here is that we know where these eagles have originated. A lot of the trapping studies that people have done, they're trapping transient birds. They don't know where they originated, so that's a big value in knowing that, and what we're doing with the D24 and D25
Yeah, that's a good
that were
point.
transmitted this year. So, okay. Uh, how can caring raptor and animal lovers spread the word about the repercussions from using methanol and other poisons on wildlife as well as domestic creatures? Uh, I think just the exposure that this has gotten, it's certainly nothing that I ever expected that we would see.
No.
I can tell you that every time I saw another piece of prey that came up into the nest after that,
We were wincing.
it was like just a little bit of hesitancy to wonder, is this another possible one that could have been poisoned? So
I'm
it
going to
didn't
tell you,
happen.
yeah, I'm going to tell you what SOAR told us in talking about using non-toxic shot for hunting or non-toxic fishing tackle, and that's talk to the people you know. Certainly you can send them to our website, and we're happy to talk to them, but what really makes a difference is when family members talk to family members, talk to friends, talk to people within your own social circle. I've been kind of surprised actually at the number of people I found that know about this. Personally, I've gone on YouTube also and just in videos telling people how to do this, let them know that it was illegal in the comments. But
Right.
I think if you really want to make a difference, you need to talk to the people that you know about it, and urge them to talk to the people that they know about it. Because I understand not everybody wants raccoons. They can be a destructive animal, but if you're going to get rid of them, you need to do so in a way that's legal and doesn't put other animals in danger. So talk to people you know. Certainly you can direct them to our blog and website, or come to our blog and website for more resources about it. So.
Yeah, and it does, one of the things that we're working on, and we'll be doing more of it in the future, is putting some educational modules together on things just like that. And you can think that this would be a really neat just short study for students to take a look at a number of different things, including what the possible effects of our use, off-target use or off-label use of insecticides for things like this, and what impact that has on wildlife, and also learn about what is okay for target registration, when it's used properly, and here's what happens when it is not. So there's some good educational opportunities there for some of the media that we're planning on putting together in the next year or two for classrooms. So get the word out and spread the word. And that's a great point that Amy brings up about lead shot and hunting, how that can affect birds of prey, especially eagles. So it isn't just methamil and Coca-Cola
Nope.
for raccoon control.
Absolutely not. So we have
Number 8.
Number 8. Thank you. In the case of D24 and D25 and the others, when they took their first longer flights, that seemed they followed water courses or valley systems. So this year, D24 did for the most part. D25 fascinated me because at first he kind of crept up along a river system, but suddenly he made this jump of 38 miles over a very flat piece of land of the Mississippi River. Now, if an eagle's up 1,000 feet, it can see, roughly 39 or 40 miles. So presumably, D25 could actually have seen that sort of interesting looking area beyond all the flat. Maybe there was a wind pushing him north and he rode it straight. But that's really the only one I can think of for a first long flight that wasn't following, river, valley system or something like that.
And that was very interesting to me. I think I just actually read that today, through some of that, about how far an eagle can see when they get up in the 1,000-foot plus level.
Yeah.
So, when you think about that, they are seeing regionally, they're seeing geography, they're seeing river systems and valleys that they can actually navigate. They're not just seeing what we typically see from from the ground, or even in a you know a small plane that's close to the ground. So
Oh, they're making me jealous.
yeah. Right. We got some exciting video that we might be able to show next year here that would show a little bit what an eagle might see. So, or a falcon, from probably not 1,000 feet though.
Okay, we have our hunting or fishing on instinctive behaviors or a combination of both. You want to go first on that one?
I believe that they're instinctive, but you also see that the parents. We see it with falcons, we see it with eagles, where the parents are showing behaviors and they're teaching the young. So it's I think both, a combination of both. I think it's instinctive. It's also learned by example. That's
Yeah,
what
there
I've
are a lot of
observed.
human behaviors that provide sort of a good analogy. If you think of a baby learning to walk, it'll start to pull itself up on things and cruise, but it's not very good at walking. It has to learn how to walk well. And hunting and fishing and flying are really the same thing.
Yeah, and one thing I can say with these raptors, it is interesting, and this goes to the falconry part of it too, where food is really used as a way to train, and I suppose it's the same way with the circus, or whatever, wherever
Yeah.
you're working with animals. But with raptors, and I'm sure even the type of activity that we're talking about, where parents are teaching young, food is used, and there's a period there when eagles and especially falcons, when they fledge, that they're chasing after the parents just to get at food or be the first. Amy's doing her raptor impressions here, which she's pretty good at. But food is used for training. It's used for training for flight. It's used to train how to hunt. And it's the same between eagles and all other raptors in that way. So, okay.
Can you ID DN1 by the marking under its wings, the white stripe? I'm gonna say no, because I've seen enough pictures of eagles like this, and they have those kind of white wing pits. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is I was really amazed whenever DN1 would get wet from rain, how the dark feathers on top really kind of disappeared, and you saw all these light feathers underneath. And then as soon as the feathers, outer feathers, have dried off, that there's no visibility of any of the lighter colored feathers. So some of the visibility of those lighter colored feathers could be just a temporary thing, depending on the position of the outer feathers or whether they're wet or not. I guess I never really have paid too much attention to that.
Bob took a very scientific approach to this, and he really felt that once they had fledged, and certainly once they dispersed, unless you had a band on them or some other kind of ID marker, forget it. You weren't going to be able to tell who they were. So that tends to be our answer.
Yeah. Okay, 11. Does RRP have any plans to enter the DN nest to check for archaeological treasures left from this season? I think we are planning on doing some camera maintenance. We're planning on possibly adding a second camera just as another backup, a pan tilt zoom camera up there. Further away from the nest, it wouldn't require us to get into the nest. I believe that when we did the initial reconnaissance, we did go into the nest, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. Kike Arnal went into the nest, so he actually did the initial reconnaissance, and then when we came back to put up the camera, it was Kike and Dave Kester at the top of the tree for the most part. So in this particular case, the nest is way out on a couple of limbs. So first of all, you have to get up into the tree, and then because there's not a suitable limb for a crossbow shot that's easy to reach, you kind of have to make your way along this limb, which is something you should not do unless you know how to do it. And then you have to rerun the rope and drop down into the nest. So
I think the answer to that is we're not planning on doing that just to go look at the remains. We've seen the famous turkey wing that probably there's still some remnants of that are still there.
It's never going to go
away.
away.
Some small. Yeah, that's probably going to, and it really is interesting to see how an eagle nest, especially this one, even all the other birds that nested in the lower parts of that large nest there, and we've seen mice in the nest, and we've seen lots of other little critters there too. So it is really one big happy family.
Yeah, yeah.
But we probably won't necessarily go into that one unless we really saw a need to. And the reason being is that, as Amy said, it is on a couple branches that are kind of reaching out towards the sun and the opening there, and there's a lot of weight. That's a pretty large nest, and if we add the weight of a human to that, we did consider that when Neil Rettig did the retrieval of DN2 to make sure that DN1 couldn't possibly perish from eating part of DN2. We are very careful about that concern, and that's the reason that he went up there to take care of that. But in considering doing that retrieval, 3 spikes were used to climb up, and Neil actually used a gaff pole to reach out and grab the carcass of DN2 and pull it aside and drop it out of the nest because of the concern of trying to get out on that limb, doing it quickly, and just the concern that with the added weight of a human, there's a possibility that we could undermine the nest or crack a branch or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weight out there with the size of that nest. So.
All right, the next question is there always one dominant parent? If so, is it usually the female?
Well,
I'm going to say yes. I'm sorry, I'm being anthropomorphic.
Yeah, there we go. So Bob would always said, as far as stick placement, the dominant one is going to be the male.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he'd always rearrange things and always had to have the last say where the branches. But I know that Mom always, we've seen Mom get her licks in too with Y branch shaped sticks and tug-of-war pulling and things like that. I think that what I've seen, and this really, be honest, this is the first year that I have watched in detail with all the camera operation at these 2 nests, and that is, it seems like female is on the nest at night, right?
Yeah.
And she's got away with the male. I mean, when she comes to the nest, if he's got food, she's got a way of, and it might take a little while, but the female is persistent in coaxing the male to drop food and give it up to her. She typically will be the one who will be able to get the male off of the nest bowl and the eggs and decide what she wants to do. And we see that pattern of the female doing most of the incubation at night and that kind of behavior. So
yeah, I think maybe it's a little harder. It's really easy to look at the young birds who are competing for food and say this one is dominant because it beats the other ones up and gets the majority of the food. And we also see that, we saw that a lot more obviously at Decorah North, a little bit at Decorah Maine, and you will also sometimes see that in peregrine falcon boxes. So
right.
I think with the adults it's a little harder because you can look at these behaviors and Dad kind of determines a lot of the nest building. Mom gets the food when she wants it and gets to sit on the eggs when she wants to. Dad builds the nest bowl and really makes the decisions about where that's going to go. Yeah. So I think you could argue it either way. And the female, if you decide it in terms of food, the female is definitely dominant.
Yeah, I think that, overall, the female is making more of the decisions. Your first impression, I guess I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So whether it's
anthropomorphic or not.
Yeah, right. Whether it's more human tendencies or more raptors here. So let's see, where are we here?
13.
13. Have the Canadian geese been a food source? They don't seem to be afraid of the area near the nest. I have not seen anything brought up into the nest that looks like a Canadian goose.
No.
Although we hear them and we see them, we know that they're there. We know from Eagle Crest, one of our other cameras out in California.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about Eagle Crest.
They'll nest up in a hawk nest.
Yep.
They will nest around raptors, and they don't seem to be afraid of at least the eagles in this area. I think they probably are less likely to be afraid of taking over a nest of a red-tailed hawk maybe than an eagle.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't seen cases where they've nested in an eagle's nest.
Yeah, that is a really good question about the food. We haven't seen it, so I don't know. I guess I'll go looking for that once the
They
conversation is
might,
over. I'm very
yeah,
curious.
they might be big enough that the eagles would not try to take one, and they might be uh, they might be healthy enough that there's not Canadian geese roadkill around, because we know that eagles are scavengers, and they'll take live fish and they'll take some other stuff live, but a lot of the prey that they get is already deceased.
Yeah, yeah. The next question is for me, and it says, can you explain foreshortening as it pertains to the size of the Decorah nest appearing smaller than it actually is? Okay, I'm going to tell you right now that's a little bit too complicated for me to try to do without really thinking about it carefully. I tend to think with my fingers and not so much with my mouth. But basically, when you have a camera at a nest, the angle of the camera relative to the nest will influence how the nest appears. It can appear larger or smaller. If you think of tricks in photography, there's a famous one with a spider on the web, a camel spider. It looks massive, and they are big, but they're not that big. The camera was positioned close to the spider and kind of tilted up so it looks bigger. This camera is back a little bit and looking down at an angle. It's also a three-dimensional surface that's flattened into a two-dimensional plane, because it can't, essentially camera is two-dimensional, and it's a surface being mapped onto a globe, so that can distort depending on where the camera is relative to the nest itself, how the nest appears. It is a subject, since if you have an interest in it, that's something I can try to do a blog on here in our little bit slower season when I'm looking for things to write about. So let's see if I can pop that one up in the next couple weeks for
Yeah,
you.
so the foreshortening, I guess I'm not familiar with that term, but you know, that is one thing that really is deceiving with especially this nest, is that it's so large that the eagles and eaglets that they're in the nest the nest makes them look smaller. So there's probably not a whole lot of distortion from the actual camera and the image, as Amy is talking about. The positioning can make it look different, but the sheer size of that nest makes the eagles look smaller than they are. If you want to have a reference for eagle size, take a look at a human and visualize from waist level all the way up to head level, and that's about the same footprint of a bald eagle, an adult or close to bald eagle. So that 9-foot diameter nest, if a 6-foot person is laying across that thing, there's 3 feet of freeboard on one side or 1.5 feet on either side.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that nest is quite large, so it does make them look smaller.
Okay, John, I'm going to ask you this question. Do we expect there to be any long-term effects on mom as a result of the poisoning?
Um, I haven't specifically gone to look at methamil. It's a carbamate pesticide. What we did experience there was that we had carbamate toxicity of that chemical. It looked like mom had that first night, later in the night, we could see evidence that she was starting to recover a little bit through the night, and then by early morning she actually was balancing and actually got to the edge of the nest, and then was outside of the nest less than 24 hours probably after she ate it. So it was most likely metabolized. I can't answer as far as whether it bioaccumulates and what kind of persistence it would have, but some chemicals that do bioaccumulate that don't break down as easily, the persistent organochlorine insecticides and pesticides like DDT and other toxaphene and others that have been banned, they don't break down, and they're hydrophobic, and they tend to partition and get into body fat. So that's where the bioaccumulation happens. Most of the ones that are used, and I think that is the case with these organophosphorus insecticides like methamil, they're not as persistent. The body can metabolize and break them down, so there's probably not as much of an issue of toxic buildup or bioaccumulation in the tissues of the bird in this case. So that's a great question, and that's a good one to check into, because each organic chemical does have what's called a organic partition coefficient that helps you identify how much it will go into fat tissue versus be metabolized in the body.
Thank you, thank you for that.
Yeah, I was probably
Discussion.
getting a little
Yeah,
bit more
that's helpful to
scientific.
know. We did look up the MSDS material safety data sheet for golden mallory. Of course, we don't know for sure that this is golden mallory. It's just in a class and tends to be used for that. And while it didn't talk about the things that John was talking about, so I'm really glad that you did that. It does say that there are not any known reproductive effects. So we don't believe that there'll be a reproductive effect absent repeated exposure.
And I think the effects that we did see were more neurological, neurotoxic type effects, which I think those are more of an acute systemic type of a poisoning that can be metabolized and then recovery, as opposed to the long-term chronic effects that could, persist and actually affect the health of mom in the future. So we'll study that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's a
Thank
great
you.
question. Okay, let's see, where are we? 16. Was the sibling rivalry due to the shortage of food sources? We don't know for sure, but I think we thought that probably was a good part of it, because really what there was conditioning going on there, and it was all around food. So as soon as mom or dad would come with food prey, DN1 was the biggest and the most aggressive, and DN1 conditioned DN2 and DN3 to basically stand off and sit back and let me have my first choice here. So I think it's really ironic. We were just talking about the whole thing about the poisoning. It is really ironic that,
I felt so bad.
DN1 would have been, and I can't say that there's any reason to favor one versus the other, but DN1, in the one case where it would have really had an effect, life or death effect on DN1, DN1 had been fed and was resting in a food coma, if you want to call it.
Yeah, just didn't care.
And didn't care, and DN2 was the one that got fed the raccoon that was poisoned. So, but definitely the food shortage of food, or just larger area that the Decorah North Eagles had to forage for food had an effect on eaglet behavior. And it was really, there was some interesting points there where we saw it looked like some really strategic behavior where DN2 and even DN3 would put their heads to the side, and they would kind of move back around the parent, and put the parent between DN1, and as soon as there was food that was available, would grab towards it from the other side of the parent, where they were protected. So some very interesting behaviors that we saw there, just to try to avoid that, and really conditioning from DN1 to its siblings.
This is a little bit of an aside, but another one of our Eagle expert panel, Jim Greer, who's been banding bald eagles in Canada and other locations for years, told us that when he's gone into a nest, sometimes he'll see a dynamic where you'll have one eaglet that's upset, and the other one just sort of immediately goes into a submissive position as the bander enters the nest, because that conditioning has gone so deep that it's like something's going on, one's like this and the other one's like this.
Right. And then we had that one, I thought it was really interesting, and this is a little bit off that subject, but that interesting video in the middle of the night where DN2
rumble at night or whatever
with DN1 and said, "I'm your equal now," and then that kind of started.
Yeah, that backfired.
That backfired, but yeah.
So we now have a question. John, I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
Can you tell all of us that haven't been watching all along what happened with the poisoning? So a quick outline of the situation around the poisoning.
Yeah, so I guess that was a work day for me, so I was busy working and came home at the end of the day. Started looking at the cameras and noticed some comments about had something happened to mom, and I started actually taking a look through the records and looked back and could see that there had been an instance of a change in behavior with DN2, and that it had stopped breathing. And that was about the same time where mom was not able to even stand up.
Oh, that was terrible.
And it was very tough to look at. Mom was not able to stand up. She was glazed-eyed, not looking good at all. It looked like very dirty. I don't know where that came from,
Yeah.
but her white plumage on her head and neck, everything looked not normal at all. But I just remember a stunning image of one wing kind of forward and one back, and just that glazed stare and just breathing that looked very labored. And so that was the point where, I know that everybody didn't necessarily agree with this, but we just decided we didn't want to show an adult eagle dying on screen,
No.
which very well could have happened. So we did watch the Eagles through the evening there. It rained all night, and did see that same behavior.
Yeah.
The glazed eyes, the panting, and not much movement through the night. There was later in the early hours, I think it was around 2, 3 o'clock, where she actually looked like she got some sleep, and then by morning she was up and starting to move, and as I mentioned before, by mid-morning she was actually venturing and walking over to the edge of the nest, and I think by late morning had ventured out onto the skywalk or the branch that partial nest branches had been moved up, and she was out there. And by the end of the day, she was actually flying out of the nest, had recovered some trout, some food, and had brought it into the nest and was feeding DN1. So I'd say probably it was about a 24-hour situation with going from the initial toxic effects, and we don't know how soon before that she had eaten what she ate, which caused that to her. But we know when she brought it up into the nest, and we know how long it took to have its effect on DN2.
So the next question is, can you compare the difficulty factor in climbing the Decorah North nest with the fish hatchery nest? I actually haven't climbed the Decorah North nest. I've only climbed the fish hatchery nest, but in watching people climb, I would say getting into the nest at Decorah North is a lot harder because, like we said earlier, nest is out here, tree is here, so you have to climb up, and then you have to attach yourself and climb out along the limbs. You have to bring the rope with you and then rerun the rope so that you can get down into the nest. Whereas in Decorah, Maine, Decorah Fish Hatchery, it's just pretty much a straight shot. You take a crossbow, you shoot a light line, you pull a heavier line, you pull your climbing line, and then you go up the rope. And it's not physically easy, but it's a lot easier than getting into Decorah North because you don't have to redirect the rope or climb out along a limb.
Yeah, the structure of both nests in Decorah is main trunk of the tree, some split off branches, and then you've got the nest right in that area that's right by the main trunk of the tree and the main branches that come from that split. I've been up in N1, have not been up in N2
You've been up in N1 twice.
Yeah, right. Doing camera work, that's a fun place to do soldering and electrical work up in the Eagle's Nest. So might probably get a chance to here coming up in September. We will do some archival digging and see if we can find the egg that didn't hatch at N2B, which is the other nest there. So we will do some of that, but yeah, big difference in the structure there. Not near as easy to get into the nest at Decorah North.
No. Okay, we have, why did mother not feed eaglet number 2, and what happened to number 3 for those who missed it?
Well, I guess what I've learned from just watching is that the parents will bring the food to the nest, and it's not like equal rationing of food. It's whoever comes close, the parent will tear parts of food apart, and whichever young is there to grab it, whether it be fall falcons, whether it be eagles, whether it be hawks, is going to get the food. So what the big change that we see is the competition between them. If there is, if food appears to be plentiful, we don't see as much of the competition and the conditioning that we saw. We've never seen that kind of competition and conditioning at the other Decorah nest in the fish hatchery to the south. So not that I'm aware of.
No, we haven't seen it there. I don't recall seeing it in Fort St. Vrain. There's a little at Eagle Valley. Do you ever watch it? But again, nothing to this degree.
Yeah. So you know, hunger drives that with the young, and we've seen the lynx that an eaglet DN3, even the difference in size with all that happened, you know, with the tossing around by DN1 and some of the things that were really hard to watch. With all that conditioning that happened, even just, you know, the hunger kicking in and instincts kicking in and DN3 finding ways to get over towards the parent.
Yeah.
And, you know, coming from the different sides and doing whatever could do, and DN2 was doing that also.
DN3 might, in my opinion, have made it if we hadn't had those 2 days of soaking rain, and the parents were also really not attuned to DN3's brooding needs, and the other two already didn't need kind of that extensive brooding. I also think it's hard for human watchers because we think of our own kids, and you know, if big kid walks over and bonks the baby on the head and steals its food, you're going to be like, no, you quit that now. You are going to your room, right? So we think, hey, these are eagles. They obviously care for their young. Or they wouldn't be feeding and taking care of them and providing the care they do. So why don't they do that? And they don't think like us. They aren't human. That's one of those areas that I think is really perplexing and difficult, especially to first-time viewers, because we expect that based on our own experience, but they aren't like us.
And what we learned, and I think what we tried to explain to people, and we saw in the end, is that type of instinctual competition and all those things that those eaglets are learning, you know, that's basically preparing them for the competition that they're going to have out when they get out of the nest and they're fledged. And you know, the statistics that we hear are that you know only 20% or so of these eaglets or falcons are going to make it past the first year. So there's a lot of competition there. Some of these behaviors are they're centuries, you know. They're learned over the centuries.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
That's bred behavior that has helped them survive, and that's what we see. So it's tough to watch it, and it's not what we would do. So that's the big difference from watching these live cams versus what happens when either eagles are in captivity and they're being fed by humans, or you know, I guess at a situation where the food is very plentiful.
Yeah, it's you know, it's hard, but it's important to remember that they're wild animals and they're not like us.
Right.
Okay, so we also have what are the chances that 3 eagles in a nest will continue to fledging, and have we seen this very often?
So well, we've seen it. We didn't have 3 that hatched at the southern Decorah nest this year. So, but in all other years,
we've seen it over and over and over in Decorah.
Yep. In all other years, we had 3 eggs, which is not the normal, we know, and all 3 hatched and all 3 made it.
Yeah.
So
we've also seen that at Fort St. Vrain, and in fact, what tends to kill the eaglets at Fort St. Vrain, this is in Platteville, Colorado. It's right on the Front Range on the east side of the Rockies. What we've tended to see there will kill the eagles is not, in fact, lack of food, although there are food issues at that nest sometimes, or sibling rivalry. It's weather.
Yeah.
So, but I think when there's plenty of food, like John said, when there's plenty of food and when you've got cooperative weather, there's a real good chance they'll all survive.
Right. Let's see here.
Okay, John, do we ever need any volunteer cam operators?
Yeah. We do, and I think we luckily have way more people that want to volunteer to do that than we can probably use. So we get to pick and select, and you know, from what we've done specifically, I've had the opportunity to get to offer that and train some people in and have them help out with panning and tilting and zooming the cameras, and switching between cameras, which is a little bit different with the systems that we've been using here. So um, we do need them, and I guess we'll see as we go through the season here. The people that we've trained, obviously, we've invested in that training, and they're people that we've worked with before are probably our first options and choices. And then, if it gets to the point where we want to have a little bit more depth to make sure we can have coverage there, we're looking for new people to help out. But up until this year, most of all the camera operation in Decorah was done with a joystick controller on location. So, and we still did a good chunk of it that way at the main Decorah nest. Not so much at Decorah North because it's a residence that is not necessarily habitated all around the year. So, and that's about as much as we can say. So,
since we're on the subject of volunteers, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of our volunteers, cam operators. You guys are fabulous this year. I loved watching it. All of our Ustream moderators, you guys are awesome. Thank you for what you do. Our Facebook moderators, you guys are fantastic. I appreciate the work you do answering questions and producing comment. And thank you also to our volunteers and moderators on explore.org. You guys were absolutely amazing. There were a lot of challenges at the Decorah Nest this year, and you did a great job meeting them and answering questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is a huge part of what we do is getting this out, and the volunteers that are helping with the moderating the chat, and I'm always amazed at all the different things that are brought up during the season and archived, and we got to see that, and you get to see that as the rewinds on our Ustream version of the Decorah North Nest, our Facebook manager, operator, helper, Sherry, put together a bunch of the sites and videos, photos with captions, and there were a lot of photos in there. We looked at all the different things that happened through the year and all the interesting things that happen. And I myself, if I've had a busy day and I haven't had a chance to be watching what was going on, the first thing that I will do is go to the Explorer site or to Facebook, and I'll look at the posts, and I'll look and see what people put on there and get caught up with some of the videos. I don't know if we thanked our videographers either.
Oh, I don't think I did. Thank you, videographers. You are so helpful. We curate you on YouTube, and when we miss something that's going on, you definitely help us know what's going on. So,
and we're used to what we've done in the past with Ustream, so it's a neat opportunity to get to learn how the system works with Explorer, and everyone loves the rewind function there on the feed that's going off to Explorer, and just the ability to go look at those videos and capture them. So it's a great interface. We love it.
So I've got the question: has the landowner ever had any trespassing issues? No, it's usually not a good idea to go poking around on farms that are where you're not wanted. I don't have any stories about this farm, but I have some stories about some other farms in the area that I'm not going to share right now. So no, not as far as we know. Does it seem rare that an adult eagle can steal an osprey? So I don't know if we're talking about, was that Hog Island?
I think so.
Yeah.
That happened, all of them last year, and then one this year.
That's right. That's right. So no, it's really not especially rare. There's a fair amount of competition between eagles and osprey. They're in the same space. They share some of the same prey base. So I can't say how common it is, but I can tell you I don't think it's probably especially rare.
Yeah. Well, even from that just one site, 2
Yeah.
years in a row.
It's not rare at that site.
I don't know if it's the same eagles that are predating and taking the young osprey or what, but
yeah, certainly one thing that would be interesting to know is if there were active eagle nests in the area, because that would tell you something about the predation that was occurring.
And it's going to be also dependent on where the eagle nest and where the osprey nest is too. In an area like Decorah North, there's probably, it's not by a large riverine system like the Mississippi River Valley, or in the case of Hog Island, there's a large body of water there. So,
With lots of mackerel.
right.
Usually I
So-
watch our cams, but I did occasionally watch that one.
Right. So obviously, if the osprey nests aren't close by, it's not going to happen with the eagles. That would be like at Decorah North.
Yeah, they're sticking to their hunting territories usually,
Yeah.
unless you had a drifter floating through.
So let's see, it's 4:56. We got about 4 minutes left here.
Somebody asked, do you think DN3 seemed to be stunted in growth, or why do you think DN3 seemed to be stunted in growth almost from the beginning? We got that question a lot, and we might have different opinions about this. My own opinion was that he was 6 days younger than DN1, and if you look at early footage, there didn't seem to be that much of a difference. I think first of all, I think he was at a bad point in the growth curve, because when eagles hit about between 14 and 20 days, they just go like that. Their growth curve goes crazy because they get all of their physical development, or almost all of their physical development as far as their weight and size, by the time they're right around 40 days. So they have to go through this insane period of growth. So it was my opinion that DN3 only looked smaller because he was kind of got the short, I don't know if he's a he, because DN3 got the short end of the stick on that. However, we might have a different opinion on this.
Yeah. I think, we saw a little bit of a difference in the amount of food that was being brought in, and although DN3 was getting chunks of food, probably not full crop full. So if you're getting fed every day, but you're only getting a bowl of food versus you're getting a full plate,
Yeah.
And you're in a high growth development area of growth, I think you're gonna put on more poundage, you're gonna get bigger. So I think there was a little bit of a difference in lag because of food supply, but as Amy mentioned, there was a big enough span in the days between hatch that in the growth curve, DN3 would have been really getting to that spurt point.
Yeah.
But
So maybe a combination of hatch order and food availability drove some of the difference in size, especially the thing that struck me, it was right before the turkey wing, and they're all playing in the turkey wing, which was around May 1st, I think.
Yeah.
Initially, before then, they looked roughly right on track, and it was right around that DN1 just seemed to pull away. So food availability certainly have played a role as well.
Okay. Let's see here.
It seemed that the DNN pair are much less vocal than other nests. Could this possibly be the cause for Dad North's lack of provisioning? It's an interesting idea. I've certainly read some papers that suggest that parental investment is driven in part by mate behavior. So I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't think we can rule it out.
I know in one case where we saw some commenting about why isn't Dad bringing anything into the nest. We knew that we had some issues with some transient eagles, some subadults, and some other intruders that were coming through. So some of that depends a little bit on what's going on around the area and whether there's any challenges from other eagles or others. So if the male is tending towards defending the area, is he going to be spending as much time tending to bringing in food prey? I don't know if that might have had something to do with some of that too.
I would tend to think if you had a lot of nest guarding going on that he's probably not going to be spending as much time hunting. And it did kind of surprise me that we saw so many, so many makes it sound like they were darkening the sky, but we did see more sort of nest intruders and area intruders here than we did down in the hatchery nest, and that surprised me a little bit. That's a dynamic we also saw at Eagle Valley, actually, because that's right in the middle of a huge, one of the biggest flyways, really probably in the world, Mississippi River Flyway. So he was constantly vigilant against juveniles and subadults and adult eagles, and that easily could have been part of the puzzle there as well.
Right. So 5 o'clock here.
How much weight can adult bald eagle lift? I'll tell you what, I think this will be maybe our last one.
Okay.
I'll answer one more question after that. So we had a whole big long discussion about this with our panel of eagle experts after the Berry College eagle was seen bringing in a branch that she dropped, and someone later weighed it, and it was like 11 or 12 pounds, which would have been in the area that she's in, probably roughly about 100% of her body weight. What our expert panel concluded after a lot of discussion about this was that eagles can generally carry about 60% of their body weight. However, you could have conditions in which they could carry more. So for example, If they catch a duck, some ducks are pretty big, or a Canada goose, because
Mhm.
they're pretty good size.
Yeah.
If they drop down on them, they're going to have lift on their side. They're not deadlifting, and then and if they have a favorable wind, they're going to be able to glide and therefore carry a lot more than they could otherwise. So my answer to that is, what we concluded was about 60%, but there have been cases of eagles seen carrying more weight than that.
Yeah.
It all has to do with lift and momentum.
Yeah. And one thing that is interesting that we observe quite a bit is eagles actually breaking branches off from up in the tree.
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
They're not necessarily picking them up off the ground. In fact, we got some video footage and a bunch of situations where they're actually flying out off of the nest or coming in. They're kind of diving in towards the nest and they're grabbing and knocking and busting a branch off and then circling around and flying back and bringing it to the nest. So that would fit in with your momentum,
completely.
having that speed and momentum to get the lift to be able to bring something a little bit heavier up. We know, I don't know how much that roadkill, black and white cat was, but or should I bring that up? But,
or some of the pond parks they brought into the nest, actually.
I think if you've been paying attention, you might have heard a cat in the background here today, but ours weigh around 12, 15 pounds. So I don't know if that was a smaller roadkill dead cat that was brought in. That could have been close to 8, 10 pounds.
Yeah.
So just, we know that, I can't even remember if it was mom or dad that brought that up in there.
The last question we're going to take is, what is the greatest distance a tagged eagle has traveled? I'm going to tell you right off, over all of the eagles that have ever been tagged, I have no idea, but the greatest distance one of our eagles has traveled is about 920, 930 miles north. That was D1, who flew north to Polar Bear Park, and I believe it was between 920 miles and 930 north of her natal nest was the farthest north she ever got. An amazing travel.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we would have never known that without doing that type of study. So there's some neat science and things that we are learning from the tracking of the eagles with the transmitters.
So John, is there anything else you would like to tell our listening audience?
I think it's time to say goodbye, folks, and thanks for watching. We really appreciate your attention. I think a lot of people were asking about how long are we going to be broadcasting here. If you hadn't seen, we're decided that we are going to do our maintenance here. We'll wait till end of August here. We'll be working on that in September. So I think it's Sunday the 28th.
Yeah, I want to say it's Sunday, August 28th.
Maybe just Amy and I might join the chat that night, and we'll just do a little bit of quick Q&A type stuff. But so thanks for watching. Thanks for your attention. This is really an opportunity to get connected with what happens in the wild and what the rules of Mother Nature are, and I think that from the letters that I get in and that we get from people, we know that there's a lot of people that can't necessarily get mobile and get outdoors. So really, it's really a privilege to be able to be part of a group that helps bring some of this to folks like you that are able to watch the interesting antics of these raptors, these bald eagles, and get to experience that and look forward to it and watching that. So thank you very much, and we'll be going here for another week or two, and then we'll shut down for a little bit, and then we'll
be back.
What happens with the 2016-2017 season. So
thank you for watching with us.
Thank you.